Hello and welcome to the PianoMan's Library. It is our anniversary today, so I have a special guest, the Piano Man.
Hello.
As I mentioned in my newbie video, he curated most of our library, and so I thought it would be good to ask him a few questions about it. So let's start off with, when did you start to read? And was there a specific book that got you into reading?
That is a hard question to answer, as I don't remember ever not reading. As far as my literary tastes as a youth, I'll be honest, I mainly read Star Trek novels and Doctor Who Target novelizations, much to my wife's utter disdain and horror. So I've always loved reading, and I honestly don't remember not reading.
Why did you start a home library?
Well, why not? Uh, it starts, at least for me, it was beyond my youthful predilections. It starts from books that one is interested in. So, in my case, I had an interest in music, and then in history and in religion. So it started out as a nucleus around those three core areas, and it just kind of grew from there. And there's a little bit more to that than just that. So it wasn't, to summarize, it wasn't an intentions to start a home library. It was more of an organic development.
And why do you love reading? And why do you read?
Why do I love reading? Well, it opens up a vista of other opinions and other thoughts. It grounds one's being, so you're not just dealing with the present in the here and now, but you're able to get context in past, in the past, also across different cultures. Often you're at the behest of translation, so there is some caveats as it relates to what translation you are using if you can't read in the original language of a non-English work, for example, assuming you're American or British or Australian. But I've always loved reading because it really does open up a world of endless possibilities. Referring back to the earlier question, what inspired reading? I've always had a love of reading, but in the 1980s, there was a children's program by the name of Reading Rainbow, hosted by LeVar Burton, who people of a certain generation would know him from Roots, or a little bit later. I think most people would know him as Geordie LaForge from Star Trek: The Next Generation. But he hosted the Reading Rainbow show. That was a show that I enjoyed and found fascinating. So there is a secondary part to your question, and that was, why do I read?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is a utilitarian aspect, insofar as if I am doing a project that involves a specific time period, I will read a book about that time period. I have in my home library, I have a lot of books that I would refer to as reference books, insofar as books that I don't read, from cover to cover, but I have it there as a resource. So a lot of my reading, because I'm a musician, can be music scores or books written about a particular piece or a particular time period, or how-to book if you're dealing with counterpoint or orchestration, or and sometimes very specific period uh, type things. Let's see, why do I read? So that's the utilitarian aspect, but there's also, just like I said, a love of reading. Um, Aside from Star Trek and Doctor Who, when I was younger, I enjoyed C.S. Lewis. So there's that sense of cautious in using this word, but it escapism, but just imagination, especially being able to be in places that you can't be, whether it's in outer space or a different planet or some place across the globe that you haven't been to or may not be able to get to. I really have enjoyed that. There has been an interesting transition, and I wish I could demarcate this better, but I can't. Insofar as in the youth, it was Star Trek, Doctor Who, C.S. Lewis, and the Chronicles of Narnia. So these are all fiction, whereas most of my reading today revolves around nonfiction. Uh, I'm not quite sure why that is, other than perhaps just the work um, aspect. Also, time is fleeting, and so I only have so much time in a day. So I would rather use my time when I can read to learn something that I can use. That's not to say that I don't enjoy reading fiction books. One of the books that I just finished was Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon, which was interesting because I went into it not really knowing anything other than being aware of it. Uh, and it was honestly more boring than I was expecting. It wasn't exciting. There were some elements that I liked. It was fascinating. French author, at least an author based in France, but he set this uh, during the 1860s in America, which I found interesting. And his focus on it, at least for his time, the mathematics uh, behind shooting a projectile to the moon, or what he imagined would be involved. And it was rather detailed in that area, and that was kind of unexpected. Really, I know he's known as kind of the godfather, the grandfather of science fiction, but in his that work, you really got a sense of the science, or what science was available at that time, uh, which was interesting to me. Okay, next question.
You've kind of answered this one a little bit, but what kind of books do you like to read now?
No. History. I like a lot of uh, history. Shakespeare. I've really been enjoying the Shakespeare sonnets. I took a class in college on Shakespeare in which we did the sonnets, and someday I can talk about my thought on modern education, including higher education. um, but I enjoy his sonnets. I've been rereading them because they're short, uh, and they're an easy read. In that sense, I enjoy uh, the prose. I've been reading a book on silent film music, which I've really been enjoying because it's well written, in the depth of the practice of the time period that he goes to, and also the variety. He does this particular author, Mr. Rick Altman, does a good job at giving the historical uh, context and some of the ephemera that you may not think about. Posters, uh, trade journals, a wide variety of sources, which I find interesting and helpful.
What does your book collection look like?
Can you be more specific?
Nope. What are some unique
Wow.
unique things about our library?
It's very eclectic. Didn't necessarily start out that way. Uh, it, Going back to the core, it's grown. It it is sprawled across multiple locations. So a good portion of the music portion of my library is in my office, but I also have another good portion outside in our external library. We have books inside the house and then books in another building outside the house. I think the wide variety. I have a lot on China. I took a course on Chinese culture and in history in college, and that was interesting because it was taught by a professor that had uh, come from China. Uh, so I have a lot of more books than I normally would. That kind of grew out of that. I think tying into that, um, we have a book cat. We'll introduce the Piano Man's cat. Angel, can you say hi? Oh. Like most cats, she's suitably stoic and not impressed. Uh, oh, so going back to China, one of the aspects of our collection is that I try to include important books, whether or not I agree with them. Some cases in which I vehemently disagree with the author. So I have the Little Red Book of Communist China as an example. I have Mein Kampf. I have the Communist Manifesto. I think it's important to read books that you don't agree with, especially if it's a book that deals with important historical topics of influence or have a major, either currently have or have had a major influence in history. And it's a matter of respect, too, that you at least you don't have to agree with another person's opinion, but you at least have to try to understand it as presented. So that's something. As far as the ride variety, just to give a quick rundown, we have works by various authors. So the classics, Charles Dickens and Shakespeare. We have as far as collections, we have the Harvard classic books. We have the great books
In 2 sets.
put out by Mortimer Adler under the auspices of, I think, of the University of Chicago and Britannica. We have a good collection of Greek literature, Roman literature. I was fortunate to have known a classics professor, and so I have a good amount of original Latin and Greek language books in the original tongues. And as I have a lot of Churchill, I'm a big primary source person. So if I can get if I'm interested in a particular author or politician or something, they've published something, I like to have something in an individual's own words before I go to books that have commentary. Because otherwise, and this is one of the downfalls with textbooks as textbooks, is that you're normally only getting excerpts of works, and then on top of not getting the full book, you're just getting somebody's opinion about that expert and what the individual who wrote or individuals who wrote the textbook, what their thoughts are, but you're not directly interacting with the text. Okay, next question.
What do you look for in a book you are considering adding to the library?
That is a good question. I think in light of kind of our current environment, this is something that's kind of entered my calculation more recently, and that's if it's an older book, I will take a look at it, especially if it is an out of print book. If it has been censored or banned for one reason or another in current day, I will definitely take a look at it. So that is to say preservation of viewpoints is kind of entered into my thinking in our home library. Every time I think about, I should really thin out, because there's only so much space, I should thin out this collection. Another news article comes up about this book has been changed or has been edited or banned, and there are many benefits to the internet and to digitization of works, especially as far as preserving fragile physical matter and having access, as a positive aspect in my own life. Now that universities have started to digitize some of their music scores and such, I'm now able to access materials that a decade ago I would not have been able to without physically going to a particular location. So there are benefits to the age in which we live. However, there are also negative aspects and some major concerns, and one of them is once a work only exists within the digital domain, it is very easy to edit it and to change it in such a way that future generations may not have any baseline to even know that something has been changed. And we can get off into a tangent in 1984 in real life George Orwell Vianisms. But I will leave it at, let me come up with what does your book, what do I look for? I think another thing to think about, that was one aspect, and this is not original. Oliver DeMille, in his book, Thomas Jefferson Education, makes a point about really thinking about what makes a book a classic. Not only in the sense of standing the test of time, but other modern classics. So I think that is another thing that I try to keep in mind. And certainly I do have to thin out my collection. So at some point that will become a criteria, is what is this a book that's going to be reread? Is this a book that I continue to get either new meaning out of, or a book that I will return to as a steadfast source of wisdom or of reference? Okay, next.
partially answered this, but where do you get your books?
Well, where I live, there's a very dangerous place known as McKay's. And in this dangerous place, there's also a freebie bin. And if you make it past the freebie bin, then there's a whole huge area of the store where you can actually spend your money on more books. So, I think there's a location in Georgia. There's in North uh, Carolina, where we reside. There's two McKay's. It's basically a big used bookstore.
There's one in Tennessee, and yeah, I think it's just these 3 states.
The other place, and this was, especially when I lived in Illinois, a lot of universities, and it still happens. It's happening even more in another story, another thought for another day. But universities will discard their older books, and so I have availed. I knew a friend who worked part-time as a librarian at one of these universities, so I've availed myself of that from time to time. Yeah, we've been very fortunate in that we get most of our books on the cheap or for free, and especially if one is homeschooling or if you're just trying to start out building your own library. Look at garage sales, estate sales. Thankfully, I don't think books have reached the same status as the home piano has, but people don't read as much as they used to, and so one can always be on the lookout for people who are actually looking to thin out, like I said, garage sales, estate sales. If there's a used bookstore in your area, those are all places to look. You do not have to pay full price for a book. Obviously, though, if it's a current day author and you want to support the author, please do go and seek out the work and pay full price for the book. But as far as older books, no, out of print and that type of stuff, that would be one place to check, and it still fuels our growing collection.
Mm-hmm. And the last question that I have for you are, what are some of the books that you are currently reading?
Okay, now this is going to be hard because I just picked up the cat. So, like I just mentioned, I just finished, this is an anthology of the works of Jules Verne. There's a nice illustration in the back, I think from the sequel, Projectile Trains for the Moon, which I love. I love old illustrations such as these. But I finished From the Earth to the Moon, and so I am going to go and read this sequel now, which is Round the Moon. So that's one book that I am reading. So there's your fiction category. The historical category, one of the books I'm reading is called No Man Knows My History by Fawn M. Brody. This is a biography of Joseph Smith, who is the founder of Mormonism. So I have been reading it. This book would be an example of a freebie book. It was originally from the Piedmont Bible College, which is in North Carolina, but this is probably in a free bin. It is a library discard, as you can tell. There's the old UBC code they used to have in the back of it. And see if I can give you a date here. So I try to note when, it's not an autobiography, but especially biography is when the book was written. And of course, I don't think.
It's not on that page.
Oh, wait, here we go. So this is first, okay, so it's first published in Great Britain in 1963, but the copyright is 1945. So I've been enjoying this. This particular author has done a good uh, job at citing her sources. Her sources. So if there is, uh, I'm assuming this is a female author by the name. I should have checked that. But has done a good job at footnoting. She's quoting a newspaper article or such, and I really like that. You do not find that all the time in biographies. I also like the fact that the footnotes at the bottom of the page. Different authors will do different things. Sometimes they'll have it at the back of the book. I got mixed feelings of that. Or sometimes they'll have it at the end of a chapter. And I understand why, depending on the layout, you may not want footnotes at the bottom of the book because there's probably the sense that you're going to disrupt the reading or the flow of the reading. But I like it because then it's less disruptive for me because I can immediately look down and see the source. Oh, this is where this particular fact or proof or whatnot was sourced from. I like that. So that is in the historical section. And then I guess from the music section, this is a book called Silent Film Sound. It is actually a book that even if you're not a musician, I would still highly recommend it. Just know though that it is on the subject of silent film music. So if you're not interested in that subject area, you might not be interested in this book. But if you are interested in it, even if you are not a musician, it's very much a historical book in the sense of laying out practices. But I love it because it doesn't immediately jump into silent film. It talks about vaudeville practices and melodrama practices and the lectures that were given prior to silent films, along with the vaudeville circuit and all that. It also goes into the economic issues that were being faced, unions, issues of definitions. What do you call the films? Right? Is this, how do you copyright this new medium? Are we dealing with a subject of photography? So just a finite set of pictures taken, or are we dealing with a dramatic work? So as an example of this different maybe approach to how to classify this new medium of film was in the Copyright Office. You might just, in the early silent films, you might just get a description, kind of a breakdown. Here's a breakdown of our film, a synopsis of our film with the scenes, and we're copyrighting. This is what we're submitting to the Copyright Office for copyright. Conversely, in Edison, you had what were known as paper copies, which were copies of the film reel, basically picture frame by frame, all the way down that was sent. So it was basically copyrighted as a series of photographs. So I found it a really fascinating and a helpful read. I got several books on silent film. It's obviously a very niche area, so you're not going to have a wide variety of books. But out of the books that I have read or that are published, I really, this is, to me, will probably be one of the proverbial Bibles. If you're interested in silent film music, this is a must-have book. So it's The Silent Film Sound by Rick Altman. So those are the 3 books that I am currently reading. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, so because it was our anniversary, we went out, we had lunch, and of course we picked up a few things.
What better way to celebrate an anniversary than to add to your home library?
So we went to our public library because
spared no expense. Guys, take note. No expense spared here.
I picked up 3 more Mary Higgins Clark books. The second time around, Zapped and My Gal Sunday. So, did you pick up anything today?
Oh, yes. So, I picked up one book called The Art and History of Books. And one of the things that grabbed me about this book was that it had illustrations of various books of the first printings and such. So that page is all in Latin, and I love when you have various artwork such as this. I really enjoy that. So this is one of those books that I probably won't necessarily read cover to cover, but I will certainly flip through, and if actually let's look at the table of contents, which is always a good thing to do.
I should also clarify, we were at the public library, but this was from the Friends of the Library book sale.
In the public library.
In the public
Well, they weren't having a book sale. They maintain several shelves
that you can purchase from.
Which you can purchase from. Our cat is distracting. So this book just to give you a very brief rundown. You start with Greece, Rome, Byzantium, and then the Saxon manuscripts, the Carolinian and Romanesque manuscripts, Gothic or Renaissance, and then of course we get to block books and good old Gutenberg, Gutenberg discreetly. So Doctor Who reference there. 15th century by countries, which I think is important. You have Germany, Italy, France, Netherlands, England, Spain. 16th century, Italy, Germany, France, Netherlands, Spain, England. And then just very briefly at the end, they cover the 17th century, so 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and then the 20th century. So that was my singular book haul. But in relation to that, when you were asking what I look for in a book, I also was just going to complement books that I already have in my library, or that can add context or provide a reference. So I have this wonderful book, which by the way, I did pay full price for at Barnes & Noble. I want to say Borders, but they have gone out of business quite some time ago. This is called The Library of Fragile History, which I did enjoy reading. I have finished this book. I think it's this trendy. I love. Check out that library. That is what a library should be. But I enjoy this book, and then in relation to that, this is a book that I should get back to finish. I have a bookmark here. We have tons of bookmarks, probably enough to wallpaper an entire house. This is called A History of Reading by Alberta Manguel. So just because I don't finish a book, it doesn't mean necessarily anything negative about a book. It just means I've gotten busy, or I had to go on to something else. Life intervenes, or I was like, okay, I'll come back to this. So this is one of those books I will come back to. There are some books you can easily come back to. I think this is a little bit easier because it's not a narrative. If you're reading a book that has a heavy story, and you put it aside for half a year, it's going to be harder to what's the main character? Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? What's the storyline? That becomes much harder. So these were two books in relation to the art and history of books. So I think they make a nice bookend, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying.
What are those?
What or what? Oh, yes. So it's not quite as cliche as, the engagement YouTube video. I don't ever do this, but this is her idea. And, on your anniversary, what she says, that's what happens. So it's happening. Happy anniversary. Also, for the record, I did not pick out that color. That was her choice.
Well, that's for a girl.
Yes, I know. But no guy would go out and pick out the super pink. Yeah.
Yes, they would. I know some of you would. Okay. Oh, cool. These are the same publisher.
Well, are you going to let them know? They are waiting with bated breath.
I'm trying to. These are all published by Back Bay Books, and they are 3 novels by Evelyn Waugh. There is The End of the Battle, and Officers and Gentlemen, and Decline and Fall. And these are really nice. Thank you very much, honey.
You're welcome.
It'll go with my collection. Those are nicer than the other ones, though. But
you also have to be careful about that. If you start getting her nice books, then they all have to match.
Very few of my books actually match. So
yeah, that is true. I want to say a pet peeve, because everybody can do whatever they want to do. I think that's fine. But I have seen libraries or home libraries where people categorize their books by colors of the cover, and
a lot of people on BookTube too.
And I don't understand. I mean, I God bless them.
Some people
I would go nuts.
Some people do it by color. Some people do it by edition. Like they put all of their everyday man libraries together and all of their black spine penguins together or such.
So how would you say that we organize our library? I could answer that, but
in our big library, it's mostly by topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I have tried to do this little area over here by author's name, but I don't like it actually like that. So I'm going to start, next time I rearrange it, I will be putting it in order of authors together, but by title.
So authors alphabetically, and then within each author alphabetically?
Not necessarily in
no. Okay.
Alphabetical order. I know.
We are reaching 40 minutes, so this has been a super long video, special edition.
Yes. And this is my editor, so I don't
do that much. I just throw music on at the beginning and at the end and hit export or render.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else that we want to end with?
I think that's all. The books that I read this week, I will just tack on to next week. And for my reviews.
Thank you for watching.
And thank you, and welcome all of the new subscribers.
Yes.
If you're still watching.
And you have not subscribed, you are more than welcome to subscribe and hit the thumbs up and all that jazz to say. Well, we hope you have a blessed day and enjoy the fall weather, and she'll be returning next week.
Yes. Thank you so much for
Goodbye.
joining us. Goodbye.